I want to start with, is this something advertisers and your brand clients are asking for, or something that we're pushing to them?
I think more and more it's actually they're asking for it. You can't avoid it in the marketplace and in the chatter and in the trades and whatnot. It's now sort of not a topic from kind of the dark corner. So it's a bit of both. I mean, there's a lot of interest on our side to educate clients around this, so we don't really have to go begging them to talk about it. They're equally interested these days in understanding what it all means, because let's be honest, it can be a daunting subject. There's technology involved, there's a lot of terminology involved, there's a lot of, God knows, there's a lot of acronyms and alphabet soup in all of this. So, you know, that's generally the first sort of phase of discussion we have with clients about this, is just helping them understand the marketplace, what it actually really means. And generally, after a few of those discussions, there's a better sense of ease about what it at least generally means, demystifying some of the terminology and realizing that it's really just another technique that we have in reaching consumers, and it's just another thing in our portfolio.
So you say portfolio.
Yeah.
So my first life was finance. So I find this whole space very interesting, right? Because a marketplace typically exists for the purpose of finding the natural organic intersection of supply and demand.
Right.
But there's really not transparency, right? So I'm curious, I think that's something we all acknowledge as an industry. So what's motivating brands, right? I mean, because for me, if it truly was a marketplace, it would be for ensuring that you are not paying an artificial premium for the inventory. You're paying what it's worth, right? But
I don't know if that is the case. I mean, I think that's not what its sole purpose would be to do. I mean, I think what I would advocate is that if it lets me get access as a buyer, it lets me get access to the biggest swaths of inventory, and I know something about that inventory, and I know something about that impression I'm about to bid on, and I can do that at scale and understand, you know, over time what the cost implications of that are, because it's a bidded marketplace and it is supply and demand, then that's a benefit right off the bat. I mean, I think it's laying things out as broadly as possible for a buyer to make kind of some judgments on, and to be able to do that kind of at scale and make decisions about whether there is value in what they're seeing or not. And you know, that takes some learning, you know, in order to understand that, to assign values to inventory or impressions that we see, because over time we've learned something about, you know, how those respond.
And I mean, what are you sort of seeing as, what are the successes that you've sort of seen so far in serving clients better? What value's been created? Is it the ability to really, you know, access sort of the aggregated inventory and access it in one fell swoop? Or is it, you know, the ability to see the true availability of premium inventory and know what you're getting when you pay for it?
I think the wins here are, there's a couple of them. One of them certainly is learning. I think this is a big learning opportunity, and it's one of the things that we talk about when we talk about measurement in this area as well, which is, you know, we've got some folks from Nielsen here, and, you know, how do we use things like OCR to measure our campaigns both in display and in video, and understand the degree to which we're reaching certain target audiences, but also not doing that to the exclusion of you know, some of the approaches we take in digital and some of the capabilities that digital has, which is to get much more granular than just a demographic. So how do you layer in sort of our traditional ways of thinking around audience demographics and definitions, but take advantage of some of the deeper sort of targeting capabilities, analytics, and understanding that we get about segments. We may understand something in a campaign that we didn't know before, which is there's a certain segment of the audience that either we didn't know existed or kind of placed as secondary, who's actually responding better to our campaign. So we kind of try to balance, you know, learn from that and try to put that, sort of bring that learning up the funnel to, you know, our targeting work, to our segmentation work that tends to be sort of the higher level strategic, approaches and work that we do as an agency with our clients. So it's interesting. A lot of this stuff tends to feel like it's down at the bottom of the funnel, but there's so much data. If you can extract it in the right way and make some sense of it, if you're doing it properly, you're really bringing some of those learnings back up to the front of the process, not just to the campaign, but even maybe to the planning process around your target audiences.
So how's that changing sort of how you serve your clients, right? Because I did a panel earlier in the week, and what was really interesting, one of the most salient things that came out of it was that, yeah, it's programmatic buying, but there's still a lot of human touches at every step of the process, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming like the skill mapping is different. You're talking about, the success metrics of television, but the mechanics and tactics of digital. That's not how we function.
Yeah.
We draw a line in the middle, above and below, right?
Yeah.
How does that affect how you serve your clients?
So it's a huge challenge for agencies. Digital is a huge catch-all, right? It's an easy way for us to say there's a lot of complex stuff going on. It's a big focus of our clients, and how we actually make the sausage, so to speak, how we execute every day, and actually how we glean the results and the learning from the campaigns that we do is a big task, and it's requiring different skill sets at the agency for sure. Number one, I would say, kind of from an analytics perspective, there's been a fairly long-standing understanding that we need to beef up our analytics support and the way we approach analytics as an agency, to make sure that we can fulfill on the dollars that are going into this area. So, we've got to be able to make better sense of it. We have to kind of understand how that flows to the top, again, as I mentioned, in terms of the planning process. And it's not just analytics, it's also, data. It's so data focused that even how we buy is different than how we bought 5 years ago. And the skill sets aren't just simply someone who's good at negotiating, right? Because in this particular part of the world, it isn't really so much about negotiation as it is about having kind of a different, cap on, which is probably more technologically focused, more analytics focused, understanding how to value data, not just buying media, but acquiring data that we might use for campaigns, and what the value of the data is. So we have different people that we're bringing in now, and we're starting to consciously look at different types of skill sets. That a resume might look a lot different today that we get in and that we're seeking, actually, than it did a few years ago. And it's not just sort of the traditional advertising major coming out of college. It might be somebody who's actually done some computer science, or lots of other types of skill sets that are around kind of quant and technology. So
sort of RTB and for video specifically, and video lends itself, as far as the medium goes, to that. And we're going to talk more about Zaxis, your sort of in-house private exchange trading desk, about buying audience, right? And applying the idea of buying audience in digital is sort of, it's that gray matter that we've talked about, right? Do you think that as programmatic buying becomes more widely a part of how we do business for online video and buying it, that it is going to create a tipping point where we start to see share shift of TV dollars that are actually notable and substantive? Because it's been a trickle effect, right? But nothing we're really hanging our hat on, because we're not getting a lot of net new right now. So
it's a good question. I think that the dollars that come over into digital media in general, or digital video, I should say, regardless of how it's transacted, whether it's sort of reserved media or if it's RTB, most likely will come from what is now television budgets to start with. I think there's, a hope on the agency side that we would be able to grow the pie, that we would be able to bring in some incremental dollars as a result of doing this. And there's still obviously possibilities of doing that if you can show, efficacy, et cetera, and you're taking it from other parts of the marketing budget. But let's be honest. I mean, I think the short term is really about looking at TV budgets as they exist today and thinking about them more as video budgets, and how do I deploy my video budget most effectively across the screens, right? And recognizing how consumers are using the different sort of technologies and platforms and trying to reach them in that way. And I think if we can get to a place where we feel better about how we're budgeting and we're deploying that, because we've got better measurement, things like OCR are first step. Clearly it's not a perfect system, and I don't think anybody's claiming it to be, but it's the right step forward to getting onto that path, which might lead to the cross-platform ratings and things like that get us understanding kind of unique reach and understanding across platform the degree to which maybe digital video and RTB or other is sort of additive, is adding additional unique reach to a campaign. Then we get smarter about planning this and budgeting it.